Hello and welcome to the reconvened Pittsburgh City Council budget hearings. I'm Councilwoman Erica Strasburger and I chair the Committee on Finance and Law. And for this hearing, we're going to start by hearing from the Department of Finance, including the three taxing bodies, and then the Department of Law. So we first will start with a brief overview from our Council Budget Director, Peter McDevitt, to give us a briefing on the department.
Thank you, Councilperson. The Finance Department provides fiscal leadership for the city focused on long-term financial health while respecting the interests of its residents. It also carries an important responsibility to ensure all entrepreneurs, visionaries, and leaders have the necessary services and city infrastructure to thrive. As the City of Pittsburgh's primary revenue generator, the Finance Department is committed to excellence in financial management for the city, its residents, and its businesses. The department is made up of 5 major divisions, which each has several subsections. Those include Administration and Treasury Division, Business Intelligence, Real Estate, Tax Compliance, and the Cash Management Division. There is a total of 40.85 full-time positions funded in the general fund. You're going to see a few more times throughout the next few weeks. There's going to be a percentage of, or like a decimal point of full-time employees funded out of the general fund. Usually it's because it's offset out of a trust fund somewhere. The 3 taxing bodies, I assume.
It
yeah.
is.
And there is no change in full-time positions, essentially. A summary of non-personnel changes in the general fund. The Department of Finance is where the city's pension and debt service payments are budgeted. So approximately 29% of the city's operating budget, the entire city's operating budget, is in the Department of Finance. The city's pension contribution for 2025 increased by $555,000 for 2026, and the additional pension fund remained the same. Overall, there's a $4.5 million increase in the Department of Finance non-personnel budget. There's about $195,000 increase for professional services, for CSI Inc., which is their tax revenue management software, and increase of $100,000 in legal fees for filing of liens. It's a 1-year decrease from 2025. Or there was a 1-year decrease in 2025. $60,000 decrease for supplies, and $4.3 million increase in debt service. Because, as I mentioned, we're going to take out a bond to pay for our capital budget, and that is paid for out of the Finance Department. They also have no capital budget projects, and they do have access to the 3 taxing body trust funds, which I briefly mentioned, and the other post-employee benefits, or OPEB, trust fund. And just a couple of fees there for you. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Director McDevitt. And we'll turn it over to our Finance Department. We've been joined by Councilperson Bob Sharland, and that's it for now. But we'll please welcome and please introduce yourselves, and we'll gladly hear from you.
I'm Jennifer Gula. I'm the Finance Department Director, as well as the Treasurer for the city and the City of Pittsburgh School District.
Excuse me. I'm Ian Fitzgerald, and I am the Deputy Director.
So just to recap on what Director McDevitt stated, like most of our budget is specifically related to expenses incurred for debt and pension, and that involves the entire city. So overall, our operating budget compared to that is relatively small. And other things like postage, we actually also pay for all of the city departments, so it's not just related to finance. Any of the increases that we had are actually due to things that are already contracted, with the exception of liens. So liens previously, we would have paid Jordan Tax Service to file those for us. And I think in the past, we may have not filed very many clean and liens based on the work that DPW did this year. We will be filing most of those and a lot of them in-house and with the help of the legal department. So we asked for an increase there so that we could perform that work. Other than that, we have no other increases, even in personnel. We've been able to, you know, get positions using salary savings and the like, so we'll continue to do that. Although it would be helpful, we did request an additional employee in the in our project management section, which is the business intelligence division, only because we have a very large amount of tech projects and tech management that takes place in our department. One being the continued build out of the tax system, other requests to move other things online, such as dog licensing, and with that we need tech resources. And so another employee in that division would help get these projects that were already started, like completed a little quicker, and also help us take on additional ones as well. So, Ian, do you want to add to any of that?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Thank you. Well, if there's nothing further as part of a presentation, I'm happy to open up to council members. Councilperson Charland, we'll start with you.
Thank you guys for being here. If I can take the privilege of saying this, I always really enjoy working with you guys on stuff. I appreciate your, I think maybe I've grown to think that finance could be like a pretty boring department. And I like the way that you guys kind of think outside the box a lot and have some creative approaches to tackling problems here. So I really do appreciate that. I do want to ask, and it's actually more of a question for Peter. You mentioned in the budget briefing, and I apologize for not flagging or trying to talk to you about this since yesterday. You mentioned a concern that you had related to pension. Am I wrong about that? It was actually an acronym I didn't.
OPEB, yeah, it was probably OPEB. Just in VEBA, like our benefits.
That was the word that I didn't know.
We have a very strong dependence on the trust funds. Usually they're meant to supplement, but we're using them to supplant for our benefits costs. Is probably more HR than you guys, but we're in
Viva.
Yeah, I can't even remember what the acronym is.
If it's not a thing for I would like to talk to you about that.
Yeah,
that I just
absolutely
piqued my interest. Yeah. Okay.
Pension, I will. I mean, these guys have done a great job. Like, we have a little ways to go, but like from where the pension was a few years ago, where it's in good shape.
Yeah,
we shouldn't take the foot off the gas, but
no. And in fact, I think we passed legislation to make sure that we don't. So we are currently over 70% funded for the pension, but that also includes the parking asset, which is parking tax revenue that we dedicated specifically to go into the pension fund. And yeah, we continually contribute like over our municipal obligation. So that's contributed, as well as market performance, actually, to a really healthy pension fund, and it continues to grow. So we're up over $1 billion now in assets. So remarkable considering where we were not in the very distant past.
I mean, it goes to show you how quickly things can change one way or another, in kind of either direction there. And knowing, having, as we all do, lots of friends in other layers of government, they are all very concerned about their pensions, and it's nice that we're not, or we're concerned, but we're, of the things that are on fire, that is.
Yeah, we're definitely not as concerned as we used to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
A lot of credit there. I do want to ask you the same question that I'll be asking all departments. I know that you come to us with your asks of what you would like. This year, because of the situation that we're in, we need to come to you with our ask, which is if we ask you to cut a portion of your budget, and I know you're not going to say right now, but I need you to start thinking about what you would be willing, what are the things that you'd be willing to cut. I think every department is going to tell us some level of like, we've been operating in an austerity model and we've cut back before, but in order to pass this budget, we are going to need to cut more. So I do want to, I'm not sure that there's a place that you'd be willing to say that yet, or if you've put any thought to it, but it is something we are going to need you to start thinking about.
And we're willing to do that, except I want council to keep in mind also that taking away from the department that actually funds about 60% of your budget may make it inefficient for us to actually collect revenue, which will not only affect our department, but the city as a whole.
Sure.
So keep that in mind. Our overall budget is pretty skinny compared to others. So although we'd be willing to work with you, there's not a whole lot to trim from.
Sure.
So.
Fully understand that. The other thing, I want to touch on kind of in the year-end space is just one area that I think we can improve on, and I think that your department has improved significantly on, is managing the real estate inventory. I know that you've looked at moving properties out, but I'm also talking about maintenance of the properties that we currently have. Can you talk to us a little bit about how that process is going? I think that I have found that, when I reach out to you, things are handled very quickly, and I really appreciate that. But what are the kind of the ways that we can get to maybe automating some of that, or doing that more on a routine basis, so that folks don't need to know who their council person is to have the abandoned lot on their street taken care of?
So a lot of the complaints actually do go through 311, and they do go to my department. There's a land care maintenance coordinator that not only does she oversee like a group of contractors that go out and clean and cut lots for the 3TB properties, but she also does respond to 311 calls. So sometimes if you reach out to me, I get it done quickly. She's actually pretty Johnny on the spot too if there's a 311 complaint. That's probably the best way to do it. We've had some constraints there because that's actually paid for out of the 3 taxing bodies. As you know, and I've said it before, that this trust fund specifically was supposed to already have run out of money. There were concerns last year because we were funding our land care maintenance program using ARPA dollars, which we received about 1.5 million of, and last year that went away. We only got about $500,000, and so there's no change to that this year either. I think there's $500,000 also in the budget for land care maintenance. We've been able to slightly supplement that with actual property sales out of the 3TB, so we actually turned about $500,000 into about $750,000 to $1 million. But if we don't sell property, that's not necessarily sustainable. I mean, not necessarily, we don't think that we won't sell property, but it's absolutely dependent on that. So looking for different ways to explore, we've reached out, we actually worked with a group called Grounded. I don't know if you've heard of them, right? So we've had conversations between us, Grounded, and the land bank, to potentially, and city planning, to look at something like a mow-to-own program and how that would work between the city and the land bank, and how we could provide ownership through something like that would actually spur the community itself to invest in the properties that are vacant in their neighborhood. Keep in mind also that there are a lot of blighted properties, and not all of them actually belong to the city. There's a good portion of them that are owned, privately owned, which we can't necessarily do anything about unless
The vast majority.
DPW goes and does clean and lean. So, but they did clean and lean blitz this year, so I actually billed about 400 bills to residents of privately owned property in the city of Pittsburgh that DPW had to go and clean. And so hopefully we'll be leaning some of those too come next year. So.
Mow-to-own sounds really fascinating. I'm sure you're not ready to talk about it yet, but do you have an idea of how long you have to mow it to own it?
We haven't worked through, we had a very open and robust conversation. I will say it's there's a lot to discuss. And so I think there's a meeting on the books for us in the land bank and Jack Miller in the legal department to go over some of the concepts that we thought about and see how we could turn that into a program that would actually then lead to home ownership after a certain period of, you know, a lease basically of the
Sure.
property. So more to come, but working through the early stages of it.
Yeah, I mean, I have so much abandoned property in my district, and you know, I've said to you, and I guess I'm like complaining kind of out loud, but when you are a constituent in the district, you don't care if it's city owned or if it's
Yep.
you know, an abandoned walkaway or what the legal status is. You know that there's an abandoned property, and that's what you hate. And you, if you're a constituent, generally speaking, you blame the city for it.
Yep.
So, regardless if it's the city's fault, you know, it's not, you know, but
So just to give you a little bit of insight on like how the 3TB works is, and in its past history, anything that was tax delinquent, we would put into a treasurer's sale and take. That, however, because we didn't have the ability or a really great pipeline to like recycle land, we ended up getting like 14,000 or 15,000 or so properties that we couldn't do anything with or maintain, right? Which is sort of, that's absolutely decreasing because of the amount of properties we're now moving through the system. But if everything is working correctly and the pipeline is working correctly and it's efficient, we should be able to do something like that again, as well as the land bank using their powers of sheriff sale to take some of these dead-end properties that are blighted and move them more quickly so that there will be less of an eyesore, right? And we hopefully won't need as much money to maintain land because we won't keep them as long. That's the ultimate goal. And things are finally moving, and now that we've taken, you know, prior year tax delinquencies back from Jordan, we actually have the ability to have more control over what we put in the T-sale. So with some careful planning, like we could start to do things like that again, keeping in mind that we don't also want to end up in the same position that we were in.
Sure.
So
yeah.
it's a delicate balance, but hopefully now that we're in a healthier space, we'll be able to start doing some more things like that.
Yeah, I have a I don't know, kind of a longer term plan to look at going after a choice grant in the Hilltop. In order to do that, we need to have a good bit of site control, which would require building up an inventory of properties in my district that I don't want us to own, but also like we need to do that in order to you know,
Right.
So to get to this kind of middle ground,
Yep.
you know, that's a future conversation between multiple departments and agencies, but it is something that I'm trying to figure out how to explore with, you know, URA and Housing Authority, and you will be certainly playing a big role in that.
Yep.
So one question that I kind of in a very different world here, the assessment, the county assessment. Obviously, it's no secret. We all know that it's something that we need to find a way to do. And I'm using very royal we there, but you know, we can play a role in this. It is something that we can start going after things on our end about, you know, the value of properties. What is the department's stance on that right now?
You mean like filing appeals on someone's
Yes.
assessment? So we certainly can. There's legislation that would require us to also file appeals on properties that meet certain criteria in order to have their assessment lowered. So we can do it, but we would have to do both. But in order to do it, I would definitely need more staff. So I actually used to do that as one of my roles in the finance
Yeah, I
department.
remember you saying that, yeah.
And there were at least probably 3 employees that's almost was 90% of our job. And then we had other members of the department that we would actually go over to the county and submit evidence and appear at the BPAR hearings. That's the lowest level. Anything that goes above that would have to incorporate the law department. So it would not just be resources by finance, it would also be resources at some point, probably by law. I mean, we can, but it would take like dedicated employees to do it because it's a lot of work and it could potentially be hundreds of properties. And I simply don't have the amount of employees with all the other projects that we have going on right now to pivot to handle that.
There's probably a threshold where, like, if you need to be able to plan to do X amount of properties to make hiring, making these staff investments pay off.
Well, and to add to this, and I think this came up in one of our financial task force meetings, if we fill those positions out, train people, get them ready to do that, and then the county does implement a reassessment, it has like a regular schedule, those positions are moot.
Sure.
So
Right.
there's some level of like, do we put that investment over here? And we're completely dependent upon another entity to make a decision and how they'd or the state, as we've talked about, because they're the ones that ultimately control the assessment cycles, but the county could also do it. So it's a weird nuance to that answer.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like hiring all these inspectors for rental registry and then not passing rental or not having forceful. Never mind.
Right.
That's from a different hearing. So sorry, I had questions on the phone here. You have a $100,000 in or $100,000 jump in legal fees, increase in legal fees. If you did explain what that was, I didn't catch it.
It's for lien filing.
Lien filing. Okay.
Yep.
And okay. There's a couple things I'd like to talk to you about that offline, but I guess the last question I have for you, back to the lot maintenance, it's $250,000 is what you budgeted for that. Am I correct on that?
Is it or is it 5? It might be 250.
For landscaping.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's 250.
And do we think, how confident are you that that's the right amount?
It could definitely.
With
Well, we had 1.5 million and it probably wasn't enough, right? So
Yeah.
we've made 250 work as best we can with supplementing funds from the 3 taxing bodies then. So
but that was how much did we have last year? Was it 250 as well
250.
last year? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very important point there that
Yeah. We had
as I'm talking to you about how you can cut your budget, that's the thing I would like to find more money for. So.
Yeah, we had probably 7 or 8 landscape companies that we used last year. We took that down to about 4. So, which was what we could afford doing regular monthly maintenance on a key group of, parcels in each section of the city. So,
Are those kind of landscaping companies, are we their only client?
no, not usually.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
A lot of them also work with, the URA as
Right.
well, and some of them do city cuts for the mayor's office. So they have other, plus just regular private clients. So
I remember before she left, now Representative Powell was working on a combined agreement between the city and the URA to bid the land care out together. Did that ever happen? Maybe I'm misremembering exactly how it worked.
So actually, I think the land care program as we had it was either sort of conceptualized by her, and it didn't come to complete fruition until after she had gone. So
Okay.
she patterned it after what the URA did.
Gotcha.
I think there was some some talk about like marrying them, that either the URA, we would pay them and they would do ours, or they would pay us and we would do theirs, because we used sort of like the same core group of contractors. And I mean, we would give the URA money for their program anyway. So like so was it like duplicating processes kind of thing? I don't know that ever actually came to fruition. Obviously it didn't, because we have two separate groups and they do use some of the same contractors, but we do coordinate with them a lot. So Karen is usually in contact with the person that runs their land care maintenance, and they do coordination quite a bit. So
Yeah, I mean, what I know about the landscaping companies is so much of the work is actually getting the vehicles there. And if we've got a city property next to a URA property and we've got to get a mower to the city property and then someone else has to get a mower to the URA property, we certainly could save a lot of money if they could just cut both.
cut all of it. Yeah, I think that's sort of what they do speak on, is say, hey,
Gotcha.
like and sometimes they use the same vendor in the same area, so that person has those parcels that are next to each other, that are city owned and URA owned, and can do them all at one time. So they do coordinate on things like that. There's been less because our actual program has shrunk because of funding, but they do try to do that as best they can. So
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you. Look forward to continuing to work with you.
thanks.
Thank you, Councilperson. We've been joined by Councilmember Warwick. And thank you. We have Councilman Kahari Mosley online as well. I'll turn it over first to Councilmember Warwick for any questions that she might have.
Oh, yeah, I don't have too many questions. Just so it seems like we've been doing very well on property sales, right? Like a very large uptick. So that's great. I'm glad to see that. Just in terms of so when we sell a property to somebody, is there any kind of like similar with the land bank, where there's like a requirement on them keeping it or doing something with it or keeping it looking good, or else we claw it back or anything like that?
There are what we call reverter clauses in the deed. There is a restriction for a number of years that says that not necessarily that you build on it, but that you keep it to code, or else and you obviously pay the taxes, or we have the right to take it back. And not just code, I think it also involves like Allegheny Health Department. So you shouldn't have any health department violations, no PLI violations, or we can take it back. The likelihood that we do that, to be honest, I've worked here 25 years and I don't know of a time that we actually did, because enforcement of it, to go back and look at all the properties that we sold, we as the finance department don't necessarily have the manpower to go and inspect all of that all the time. But yeah, and I don't know that it's ever been done, but the reverter clause is in the deed. Yes.
That might be an interesting thing to try and add to the, the view, what is it, the one PGH, whatever the system is, where you can look up permits, we can look up everything that's happening on properties, to have some kind of a tag where it's like, this was a city property sold to, sold to this, whoever the current owner is. Not that that's something I've seen a lot, but just it's because that does happen, right? People are like, oh, I'll buy it, and then they just let it sit there and they don't do anything
there's also
with
a
it.
question though of, once we take it back, what do we do?
What do we do with it? Right.
So if no one else is interested in it, then obviously we haven't always been the best landlords either. So
Right.
then we take it back, and then it still continues to sit there. So is the taking a solution really to the problem?
Or maybe it's just to clean and lean it and then just put a new lien on the property, just charge the owner. That makes sense, yeah. And then another real estate related question. So we had talked at some point about streamlining the process for the land bank to kind of get in and evaluate properties. Is that something that was worked out?
So my team coordinates with the land bank all the time. They usually go and see, they'll schedule times to go out and view properties.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's a number of them all at once.
Okay.
There is an issue because they're city owned and the land bank could be taking other people in there. There could be an issue with liability. So this is more of a legal question than a procedural one as to whether or not we want people unaccompanied by the representatives of the owner to take themselves and other individuals onto a property where they could potentially be injured and hold the city liable. So I think in the best way that we can, we've tried to make ourselves available so that the land bank can go in and view properties as they need to. And they at least do it, I want to say almost, at least, I want to say one Friday, if not two or more a month. So I know
Okay.
every Friday is like a field day and they go out into the field.
Okay.
And they take, not just them, but they might schedule multiple viewings, even with people that are interested in purchasing our own properties, and to go open properties up, because it's a coordination also with DPW. A lot of these buildings are locked or boarded.
Right.
And so they have to have them go out and remove, maybe the boarded panels or whatever for them to be able to enter too. So we have to coordinate with DPW to go open the buildings first. So it's not just a finance thing, it's a DPW thing too. So it's coordination between a bunch of different departments and the land bank.
Okay,
I think it works okay. I haven't heard anybody saying otherwise recently.
Okay.
I mean, but
Okay, well, maybe it's working a little. I mean, I haven't heard anything either. I was just curious
Yeah.
because I know it was, there was some frustration about having to like schedule with DPW and not being able to go
Right.
after 4 p.m. or something when it would be more convenient. I mean, just to kind of get stuff.
well, my staff doesn't work overtime.
Yeah.
So going past, earning calm time or something to go out into the field, sometimes at 6 or 7, especially now when it gets dark, may not necessarily
Right.
be something they could do, or
Yeah.
it's not safe to do. So there's that. But yeah.
Okay, yeah, and then the only other one is that not too often. Again, my staff would have more insight, but I know myself. I've had a few cases of folks who will come. It'd be like a handful, maybe like 4 or 5 that I can remember, kind of, where someone will come into my office hours just totally frustrated beyond belief with some tax issue, right? Like some tax issue. And, and I'll forward it on. And I usually just forward it on and say, can you guys, work with this person? And then, and hopefully I don't hear back from them, but sometimes I do. And that, is there and I know that these things can be difficult, but just sort of like, well, I should ask, what's the process for, like, if you have someone who's maybe older or maybe has, whatever, or they're just at their wit's end, to just like give that person a call or get them in the office and sit down and just figure it out on a one-off basis, where I know you can't do that with everybody, but every once in a while, like if someone's coming into their council person, just like,
We do it all the time.
Okay.
And I actually, I myself, and Ian can speak as well, but I have an open door policy, and I myself have had many taxpayers stop in and be directed to speak to me, and I've happily invited them into my office and helped them solve their problem. I just helped a guy today that he had a bill for a roll call and found me because the invoice that came from roll call says Treasurer City of Pittsburgh, but I met with him and helped get him pointed in the right direction. But we do it all the time. Even in real estate, I know that they've accommodated people and had them come in and sit down and help them out. That's not uncommon. And so if you sent someone down and contacted like Aaron Pickett and real estate, or even myself or Ian, I think it's totally okay to do, and we'd be happy to help them any way we could. So,
Excuse me. And to add to that, we're continually looking for ways to improve always. A couple of things we've changed recently is all of our like taxpayer facing services are on the first floor now. We closed the second floor and moved people down into the old 311 area. So like when you come in for business tax or cashiering, you can go there, or then real estate's in the other door. So like we have one spot or one floor area. We also are looking at some of the tech stuff. I think we had some issues with the phone trees. So back during the height of the pandemic, they put a software on top of the phone system, and then it was going certain places, and we actually noticed we had some feedback from taxpayers that they weren't getting through in some ways, and so our operations manager did a thorough job of sort of working with IMP and getting them the right direction, where some are actually not going into Twilio, some are going directly to phone lines. We have a better pulse on how Twilio is working, and we're also working with IMP from, I guess, the UCAS projects either coming the end of this year or early next year. We're excited to have a new sort of vendor to work with on phone calls and have a little bit more insight into the data and see who's calling when, there are some limitations of the current system that we've had to alter how we operate, but all with the goal of getting better service to taxpayers. And even though we closed the second floor, we have a business tax group. There is like a waiting area that we do see. If people have like a very specific tax question, they can come in. But no, our management team does a great job of working with taxpayers whenever they need them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just know I find, phone calls are incredibly frustrating generally, right? Like it's better to email. I mean, I always say, I prefer people even texting me over, happy to take your phone calls, right? But if you want to respond, like the timeliness of my response is going to be better with an email or a text than it is with a voicemail that's like, you know what I mean? Like, so I know that and we had talked about the outgoing message maybe said 48 hours, and I think that got updated.
I think it did, but to be honest, we're probably within that realm now too. I think some of the growing pains actually are due to like outdated tech that we do have, like an outdated tax system, which the further, the older it gets, like the more odd things happen with like calculations and things like that, like the data that exists in it. And then the other thing too is, having to bring in Twilio, which we were thankful for because the phone system that we did have was antiquated, and it also required people to be in office, but it's maybe now not the best solution, and it has its own limitations, which have caused issues with getting in contact with the finance department at times, especially during like high volume, like billing season. So trying to work through all of that, I think we have it now under control because we had to peel back many layers of the onion to figure it out. And thanks to Jeff for doing it, because it was pretty involved. I think it's good now. And so I think you should see like less calls, but that being said, there's always really one-off strange tax situations that aren't caused by any of those. And for whatever reason, they just exist. Like in our world, I say it's not just a job, it's an adventure. Like things are really weird every single day. So definitely, if it's an experience that someone can't quite figure out, especially if they're older and they have trouble understanding or navigating technology, absolutely the protocol is to call one of us, and we will, if we don't do it, somebody else will personally meet with them and help them out.
Yeah, it's hard sometimes if someone come in and explain to me, and I'm just trying to take notes, and I'm like, okay, you've lost me.
Yeah,
here.
no, and it's not
Like
so strange
halfway
in our
through.
world, and especially with older citizens, a lot of them don't like to pay online. They still, some of them don't even like to mail checks, that they still come in person and pay in cash. So it's not something that's uncommon to us.
Yeah.
So we're used to it. So absolutely give us a call and we'll do it, whatever we need to do.
And one thing we've tried to get better at is also communicating upwards. So when we send out some of our real estate tax billings, we were sending, I believe, emails to council, 311, mayor's office, explaining what the billing is, because we anticipate an uptick in calls
Right.
across the board, right? So if we send out a regular bill versus a prior year delinquent, we're going to get two different types of calls. Usually prior year delinquent's much more complicated. People might want a payment plan. We'd rather everyone be aware that that happened,
Right.
so that they then funnel them back to us. And that way you don't have to jot down notes. You can be like, hey, we're already aware of this happening. Go to Aaron, go to so-and-so. That's our goal, is to be a little bit more preemptive with how we communicate when we do things. And as we move to a new software system, it'll become a little bit more cyclical. But yeah, so we sort of took this approach with the taking back of the delinquent tax collection from Jordan. So we
Okay.
started doing a new
Yeah.
billing ourselves. So we sort of folded that into like a timing. We didn't want to send everything out at once, but then we have to regularly bill all the time. But again, there are different problems associated with different types of billings.
Okay, yeah, thank you. It's always a pleasure working with your department, and you, Director, of course. And yeah, I appreciate everything you do. That's all for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember. We have Councilman Kahari Mosley joining us online. Councilman, do you have any questions for Finance?
Hey, good afternoon. I don't have too many questions, but I would like to hear from Director Gula. I know you had begun piloting a program, I believe, over in the West End and also in the South Hill section of the city. Can you give an update on that? And I apologize if you talked about it, prior to me joining the meeting.
Sure. Well, it's not completed yet. I think the deadline for applications was this week? It's tomorrow, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Unfortunately, I don't know that it's going to be very successful. I think at last count, we had received 3 applications.
Okay.
One was denied and 2 are active.
Okay.
So, but, we tried it, and it may or may not work. So,
Sure.
but, you can't figure that out if you don't at least try. So,
Absolutely. And in terms of, the ongoing challenges, around, vacant, abandoned, and blighted property, particularly those, in the city's inventory, are there other kind of strategies and things that we can be doing? Obviously working with the land bank, and obviously we work together a lot, in my role on the land bank board, also with, I believe District 9 does have, the largest inventory of city-owned property of the 9 districts. Is there other, best practices or models around the country that you're looking at, or, do you think there's other things that we can be doing, other strategies we could be implementing?
there were a couple, and I don't know if we want to travel down that path, but I mean, there was talk before about establishing just a flat rate for lots and a flat rate for buildings to see if that would garner interest and potentially push, garner interest enough to like push the sale to go to a court auction, which could then grab a larger sales price. That's been floated around. There are some other things that we may want to try. One of them also was potentially quieting title to some of the buildings that we bring in right away, and so that we could make the sales process for those much quicker and hopefully move them out of inventory before they start to degrade to the point where we wouldn't receive, a decent value for something, and it would also, add to blight. So those things have been, discussed, and they definitely, at least for the quiet title part, might be a financial constraint, but we might try it with a few to see how it works before trying to start to implement something like that, like large scale. So These are some of the things I specifically spoke to with Solicitor Kubiak before she left, and working with, Jack Miller in the law department. So they might have some other ideas as well, but those things specifically were things that we looked at doing that we might be willing to try, in the next year or so to see if we can improve. But property sales on the whole are still continuing. I think even for the month of September, that we brought in about $93,000 in revenue, and that's not including the properties for PLB or URA that were transferred. That's strictly sales from the finance department. So that at one point was probably what we would do for the whole year. And now we're consistently, hitting numbers like that every month. So I don't want to take the foot off the gas, so we want to keep it going. But whatever we're doing currently is sustaining itself. So, but yeah, looking at, if you have any other ideas, we're open to hear them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And my last question would just be around, an issue that comes up a lot around, tangled titles, and clearly, the real estate department doesn't have the bandwidth, to provide, wraparound services and help walk people through the process like Catapult, and some other organizations. Does the real estate department ever, correspond with those organizations like Catapult and other organizations that are doing that very much needed work, but clearly, folks within government, don't have the bandwidth to be able to do for the people that you kind of walk into the real estate office and say, I want to figure out what's going on with grandma's house, and then they find out that it's a tangled title, situation. Has there ever been, even discussions about maybe even, obviously not referring people, but having kind of like a list of places folks can go once they kind of hit the wall, with city real estate, where it's like, there's like other steps that you have to take, before you can, take rightful ownership over, a family member's piece of property that's tied up.
No, and something like that might be actually a little out of like our scope, so to speak. I mean, my staff they're basically, tax collectors, and
Sure.
those things sort of like dabble on the legal end of things. And we do have to be really careful about giving any type of, legal advice. So
Right.
As far as those things go, we could probably get a list of like organizations that could provide free legal services to someone, like neighborhood legal services. I think I received an email the other day and I referred, I was like, I can't give you legal advice, but if you need an attorney to help answer some of those legal questions, if you call them, they might be able to help you or direct you somewhere that could. So I don't think they're opposed, or I can't be positive, but I'm sure that my staff would actually direct them in that way. But we could absolutely post something that would give somebody, I guess a resource that they could reach out to in case. But
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your ongoing partnership. We work together a lot. And, you've been, willing to be very creative and think outside the box with some of the challenges, we've been trying to overcome, with, trying to bring, publicly owned land back to productive use. So thanks for your time today, and that exhausts my questions.
Thank you, Councilman. Seeing no other council members with us, I'll just pivot to some of my questions. And, it's been really great to get to know both of you more and see more of your respective roles through this joint financial task force process. I also think you left out a very important title that I understand you hold as Harbor Master.
Oh, yeah, I'm a Harbor Master.
Yes, which was news to me. So, some of these relics.
I actually made the executive group honor me on National Harbor Masters Day. It's part of the academy.
As you should. but also part of your, this isn't going to tie into a question, but just part of what I've learned this year is the extreme complexity of forecasting. To, we hold the assets, the city's assets, and how are we, expecting our investments to produce or not produce. So I mean, it's just really, it's a lot that you have, so much more than even council members see on a daily basis, or the public sees. We kind of touched on it in an indirect way, but maybe for the purposes of us and for, anyone who might be tuning in or tune in the future to this conversation, there has been a shift in property tax revenue collection. And do you want to just go over what that shift has been and maybe some of your expected changes or goals in the future with that?
Sure. So there's a number of factors that have affected our property tax revenue. So initially, COVID had a big role to play, right? So people not being in the office, like emptied downtown office buildings, and these giant buildings are sort of valued differently than your regular standard residential dwelling. They're based on occupancy and what revenue they generate. And a lot of these downtown buildings were seeking reassessment based on the fact that these buildings were largely unoccupied and weren't revenue generating anymore. So that sort of kicked things off. And the other thing that is impacting the revenue would be the change to the common level ratio. So every year that we move further away from the last reassessment, which was in 2012, the common level ratio decreases. So an assessment year, the common level ratio should be 100%. And every year further from that, it gets lower and lower and lower. So a few years ago, it was up around 60%. Now it's closer to 50 and dropping. So until there is a new reassessment, that level will keep dropping, and we will see our real estate tax base shrink. So we get a certified assessment, which is basically the city's tax roll, and every year we anticipate it going lower and lower and lower as more and more people reappeal their assessments and file appeals on their assessments based on the common level ratio and have their assessments lowered. And that's continuing to happen. And so that's now outpacing the downtown buildings because there's only a certain number of those, right? And most of them are ones that we're going to appealed and have worked their way through the court system and are kind of done and over with. But now it's just basically residents that continually reappeal based on a dropping common level ratio, which is shrinking our tax base, which then obviously we don't get to bill as much and we don't bring as much in. So now the earned income is now the chief source of revenue for city taxes, and then real estate is next, where in the past it's always been real estate was the highest. So.
And if we were to, Ian, you've touched on this a little bit or in past meetings, but if we were to, let's just say that the county were compelled to reassess on a regular basis, just say every 3 years, which we highly support, just to be clear, if anyone's listening there, we highly support this as a city. What changes would need to be made within the Department of Finance to be prepared for that on a regular cadence, if any? Additional staffing? If so, how many? Or really nothing at all?
So
I don't think anything at all based off of that. So the county would have to go out and figure out how they would do a reassessment. They would probably contract it out, which is probably one of the holdups because it's probably going to be millions and millions of dollars. So they would do that, but we are already currently developing our new tax system with some of these changes in mind. Mm-hmm. So we're already trying to anticipate as best we can into the future what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. As you talked about, the regular rate of reassessment would help us in the future avoid the scenario that Jen just went through, right? Mm-hmm. So if they're regularly reassessing the common level ratio basically becomes a non-factor because we can always forecast off of every 3 years. We know there's a reassessment coming. So like it affects us more probably in forecasting, which is more what we do. So from a staffing standpoint, I would say not much effect at all.
To be clear, how the process works is the county does perform reassessments, just not countywide, right? So occasionally when there's new construction or there's building permits, I mean, they obviously reassess properties or change them for whatever reason. There's catastrophic loss. When we get those updates, but at the beginning of the year, they send us a big giant file with every property in the city of Pittsburgh and their assessments, which we load into our tax system, apply our millage rate, which we know obviously by legislation, and it calculates everything and we bill. So for us, whatever the county does is fine. For us, like our process doesn't change whether they reassess or they don't. So.
Thank you. Last question. How has, can you explain the change for those who might be listening, of bringing the past year's tax revenue in-house and what that's meant for you all, and just the changes, like the 30,000 foot view, who's doing what and who's not doing what, that we're still getting, the school district has not. So can you just explain all of that for everyone?
Yeah, and I'll let Ian add too. But there has been growing pains, but I think it's been extremely important. Number one, from a data standpoint and moving into the new tax system. So doing it has exposed some holes in our process as well as Jordan's, due to the fact that a large amount of what we do currently still is manual. And maybe things weren't getting updated because the process to do them manually was difficult, and maybe they didn't have to worry about them because we weren't the ones collecting, right? But I think on a whole, number one, it's better for residents. The prior Jordan contract, if someone paid them or was on a payment agreement, the money went to pay Jordan fees first, penalty and interest next, before it even touched principal. So in a lot of cases, people were paying, very rarely touching their principal, which kept them basically in arrears. I don't think the city is necessarily about that. We're about having someone be tax compliant, which means we want to do everything we can to get you right and correct before we have to take any other action against you, right? So it's been a little difficult, especially with the first billing, because to save money, we send out one bill that said prior year tax, which was also confusing for residents that had never gotten one of those before. That's the way we used to bill, but that was very many years ago. And so they were very unclear as to which years they actually owed. So we got a lot of calls so that we could help explain to people what it was for and what years it encompassed. In other cases, there were some issues involving TIFs that were no longer TIF agreements, but we never actually received money from Zion's bank. So the funds weren't, or the payments weren't showing on the account, and someone received a tax bill, which they shouldn't have. So there's been some things to work through, but all in all, they exposed problems that we're actually able to dig into, fix, and now manage going forward, so those things hopefully aren't happening in the future, especially with TIF agreements. So, and all in all, I think we sent out over 17,000 bills for prior year, but we were also able to, I don't know if you've seen revenue reports lately, but last year at this time, due to a large amount of refunds, we were in the hole as far as prior year collections went. This year we're in the positive, even though we also issued a large number of refunds due to reassessments on larger properties. So it's definitely been more beneficial to the city to do it. We pay off people's principal and not interest first. And so somebody's actually making more headway. We're seeing the actual revenue as opposed to just trickling in amounts coming from a third party. So
Thank you for that. And it feels like contracting with Jordan Tax Services is almost like a privatization because of the way that they're treating, taxpayers, and profit first, and then meeting the obligation rather than the reverse, which is what we're trying to do.
right.
Yeah.
We also have the ability then to negotiate with, to have a payment agreement with the city. There is a certain list of standards, but the treasurer also has the right to negotiate outside of what those parameters are in order to help somebody out. So we have more power to help somebody stay in their home so that it's not taken through treasurer's sale or sheriff's sale. So
Okay. Lots more
Anything
thoughts,
to
but
add?
maybe some offline conversation and ideas and brainstorming for future ideas and future movement. Unless there's anyone else with questions for the Department of Finance, we will not recess. We want to thank you for your time and your answers and all that you do. You are free to go, and we will bring up. Actually, I think what we will do, we'll take Department of Law first, and then separately Ethics Hearing Board. So, Mr. Exelis can come to the table. Thank you. And while the law department's coming to the table, I'll turn it over to Budget Director Pete McDevitt.
Thank you, Councilperson. The Department of Law provides legal advice and serves as in-house corporate counsel to the City of Pittsburgh, which often involves providing advice to the mayor, city directors, city council, and various governmental units. It represents the city in all legal aspects of its daily governmental functions. It also represents the city in high-profile cases, significantly impacting public policy and city residents' quality of life. The Department of Law operates as a quality, proactive, boutique law firm, attracting talented professionals with impeccable integrity from the public and private sector. The Department of Law is divided into several general service areas or divisions as follows. There's federal litigation, state litigation, labor and employment, general municipal, claims, and open records officers. There's a total of 39 full-time positions in the 2026 budget, which is a decrease of 1 from last year. In non-personnel changes in the Department of Law's budget in 2026, overall there's a $524,000 decrease. A lot of that is for professional services. There's a $250,000 decrease in legal fees, and there is an $800,000 increase in miscellaneous, which is for judgments. Overall, there's a little over $2 million in the judgment lines for the Department of Law. They have no capital projects, and they have no trust funds.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to the Department of Law. Acting Solicitor Jesse Exelis. I don't know your official title, Jesse Exelis.
Yes. Acting Solicitor Jesse Exelis. As Mr. McDevitt pointed out, we would be taking a reduction in staff by 1. And I can kind of go generally over what for our budget. Like for the most part, across our categories, we are taking some decreases in expenditures. However, as you'll see in our judgments, we are taking an increase. I'll say there's a little bit of background with that is you can't see but in 2023 and in 2024, that was when we were dealing with the Jim Rogers case. So we did kind of take an increased budget during that settlement to handle paying that settlement off. And then in 2025, we kind of take a big hit because of kind of that process. In 2026, I would say we're back in line with kind of our usual annual settlement budget, which is, for the most part, kind of, even though it's under law, it's impacted by all departments. So, Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. I think we'll go in the same order. Councilperson Charlin? Unless does anyone have a time constraint? Big time constraint? Okay.
So, acting solicitor, Jesse, good to see you. I always enjoy working with you, and will always feel terrible when I was a staffer and you had to be our liaison on the redistricting committee, and how much you had to go through with us there. So, you deserve, big titles for having to spend that time there. I do want to ask, one thing we've not heard about for a while is the nonprofit appeal case, the purely charitable charities. Is that right?
Yeah. You can say the exempt nonprofit tax. But go ahead.
Yes. So I don't think we've had an update on that in quite some time. I don't think we've had an expense on that in quite some time. Just curious how that's going.
Yeah, so I don't have the numbers on top of my head, but I would say procedurally we have a lot in front of the board of viewers. I would say a couple hundred, and we're just kind of waiting for them to schedule times to actually then have our hearings for that. And to give a bigger picture, that's like there's probably basically three steps. There's I don't want to say a board, but there's a committee on with the county where they first review our challenges, and then they'll kind of review it, and then they'll make a determination. If their determination isn't to what we believe is correct, like if they say this property is tax exempt, we have the opportunity to appeal that, which then takes us to the board of viewers, which is where a lot of our current challenges are at, and then once they have their review, if they make a determination, we still have an opportunity to appeal it to the Court of Appeal. So we're kind of in the middle of the process. I will say also, with the incoming administration, it also depends on if they want to continue that. That would kind of be the process going. If not, then however they want to handle it, we could drop it if need be. So
sure. I'm curious what the plan will be with that, especially considering that we've already spent a good bit of money on outside counsel.
So for most of it, we've kept in-house for what I would say is the not larger companies. So not the
sure
hospitals and stuff. We've done that more in-house. For hospitals or bigger organizations, universities, we have relied more on outside counsel to handle more of the complex issues. So
okay.
We have a couple of those, but for the most part, we've tried to keep what we can in-house where we can.
Yeah, I can't remember the number, but I do remember the name of the firm. But I would be curious how much of that has been spent down.
Okay.
So the other thing, we really haven't had a whole lot of, I guess, a briefing on the facility usage fee, and we're all aware of that. This is a major concern for us here. What a repayment might look like. Where is that money going to come from? I don't believe it's budgeted.
So law is currently in talks with finance to kind of determine the plan. We do have a proposed plan. I don't think it's appropriate to discuss here. It'd probably be more an executive session, but we are working with finance to kind of have a proposed plan for the various requests for refunds that will come to the city post that decision. So I would say the best answer is follow up with myself and Director Gula, and we could probably discuss more with council on how that proposed plan will work out.
Yeah, it probably would be wise for us to have an executive session on that soon.
Yeah.
So if we can make that happen. So, one thing that did change for me from going from being a staffer to a member of being in some of these executive sessions and seeing a lot of the trip and fall lawsuits that we end up paying out, and kind of just how frequent those happen, how often, and sometimes the thing that I've always been like stuck on is the signpost that we don't grate all the way down to the sidewalk level. Someone trips on them, they break their collarbone. Now, they're injured and the city's out money. And so that's like a common refrain in my community meetings. Like, if you see a signpost that's not graded all the way down, let me know right away. And I'm very aware of that issue there. But how effective are we in kind of being proactive about, these are the things that we notice we are constantly being sued for, so the law department should talk to DOMI about grading those down. How are we handling those? And I'm using that as a very specific example. I'm sure there's lots of other things, but do we have the database to say, like, this is where a lot of our lawsuits come from, and so we should figure this out. We're always, the Margaret Vitale always jokes about, like, reverse is not our strong suit. When we drive trucks backwards, we run into things. How do we figure out how to avoid that? And is that something the law department takes a lead on?
So it's a good question. We actually just procured a file management system where we are able to kind of, have our cases and review them. And I'm hoping to work through this the coming years, like being able to kind of tag and like categorize things. So then we would have the ability to kind of, on a more frequent basis, to be able to see what kind of litigation we get, what the outcomes are. So we have like a little database of our own to be able to kind of look back and kind of react quicker on future stuff. So that is like part of my plan. And now that you mention it, I'll definitely kind of prioritize to make sure like we have that ability to kind of be able to review and report kind of like what we're seeing in our cases. The only thing I would kind of counter that is, like, some of our cases do take time. So like, even though we get the case, we won't get the outcome maybe until years later. So sometimes it's like hard because that data won't come up until later on, but we'll work on kind of getting something.
Yeah, I guess I don't think I knew when I was a staffer here how often we were being sued for, kind of the trip and fall or the vehicle claim or those kind of things. And having, sat through the executive sessions that I sit through now, and seeing like how often this is happening, I do think that it is like worthwhile for us to think about what we can do in like terms of preventing these payouts. And also, people are getting hurt or cars are getting damaged. Like, there's another thing there.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I would say, like, law would say to be proactive in finding them, that would be the best way. But that is the hard part, right? Like, if we have, I don't know, however many square feet of sidewalks that we'd have to inspect on a whatever recurring basis to then be able to know, like, which ones, which sidewalks have exposed metal, or, the other part is, which I guess isn't necessarily not a shame on us, but like, if we're having our vendors do the work and they don't do it right, like, it also probably is incumbent on us to like look at their work to make sure that it's being done correct. But
Sure.
That'd be the best advice that I could say, is like, we're trying to be proactive and kind of reviewing the stuff as they come and go. So
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a failure in multiple ways when we are paying something out like that. There's one other major thing I wanted to ask you. This $800,000 for judgments. Do we really think that's going to be? How do we feel about that?
I will say that law asked for more.
Yeah.
And this is essentially what was agreed on. So, I mean, we cannot predict the future as far as like things that are coming down the pipe. So we would work with this. If you guys have a different alternative, like, obviously here to kind of work with you guys. But at this point, like, we're taking this as it is because that was less than what we had requested. So
Sure. Yeah. That's an area that always kind of worries me, that like there's always these like extenuating circumstances that were in the past of why this number was high.
Right.
But if the extenuating circumstances every year, then it's like, oh, maybe this is not an odd year. This is something we need to like
Yeah.
figure out how to budget for.
It is difficult to budget for that though, because like as you mentioned, like even if it's an extreme case, it's a different case each time, so we couldn't even predict like
Sure.
kind of these things. We try to obviously get ahead of our cases to either evaluate them or try to see our best defense to like mitigate our risks. But for now, like I think this is okay.
So my last question for you, sorry, I've got two more. You, and specifically you personally, have played a role in our office a lot of like, we don't know how to do the thing we want to do, but we know what we want to do, but we don't know how to make it legal. So we need to work with the law department on how to blue sky this idea. Like what is the thing that we need to do to do what we'd like? And I think that has been really helpful. Both you and Solicitor Kubiak have both been really helpful in terms of like, let's think about how we can make this happen. And it is not to talk about other people that have been in the office, but there's always been there have previously been opportunities of doing that. And the answer was just like, no, you can't do that. And I really do appreciate that from you, that you're willing to like, hey, I'm not sure the way you're trying to do that is super illegal, but why don't we try to do it the different way that like we'll still solve for the same problem and we can defend this. And I really do appreciate that. I just, the thing I would like is sometimes I know that is like an extra task for you, or it is a thing that you can do when you do all the other, hundreds of things that you need to do. Is there a way that you can think through that like we as council can have better access to kind of that boutique skill set that our law department can provide?
So are you asking if the law department in general could respond more how, I guess myself and solicitor?
I just that it can be and I don't mean this in any way, but it's that I know that this sometimes takes a very long time for you to get back to us on these things.
Gotcha, yeah.
Because you're working on so many other things.
Right.
Is there a way that like we can find a way to make that function more efficient?
Gotcha. I will say there's internally with Solicitor Kubiak leaving, it was just me filling the gaps, which is taking more time. Ideally, once a new administration comes in and kind of have more settled leadership, I believe I anticipate that you'll get a quicker response time, because there'll be more, like right now it's more of a staffing issue, really what it is. So I would say like the ideal thing is in January, once we kind of fill in gaps, like that response time will get quicker. So.
Gotcha. And then the last
Sorry, and also like
yeah.
I know I get a lot, so if there's things like email me, always like I'm happy to kind of relook at something if I forgot to get to it. So
yeah, I don't think that's been much of a problem.
Okay.
Just I usually know you're looking at something. It takes some time. The last question is the same question I'm going to ask all departments. You come to us and you're asking for additional funding for lots of other things, but this year we have to be asking you, what are the things that in your department that you think you can cut? And I know that you probably believe that you've been doing a lot of belt tightening, but we are going to need to figure out how we can tighten the belt further.
yeah, I mean, I would say the struggle is like we've already got that cut. Like, from our point of view, we've already made that cut through what was approved through the mayor's budget. I can look again. I don't have a specific area to mention, but we're happy to kind of work through to make sure like our budget is in line with kind of council's concerns with kind of what's going on with the budget. So
I appreciate that, and that will be something that we will be working on soon here. So thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Warwick.
Yeah, thanks. I don't have too many questions. Actually, sort of, Councilman Charlin touched on pretty much all of them. So just, well, so for the nonprofit property tax exemptions, so you said there's a first round.
Yeah, there's a first round where it's like the preliminary where we make the challenge.
And then what, the county reviews that?
The county reviews it. In my mind, I cannot remember the exact particular office. They review it. They make a determination of whether our challenge is appropriate or if they believe the property is actually, if they determine that it's still tax exempt.
And are to the best that you can, sort of, are most of them getting the thumbs up on the first round, like, or not?
Yeah, I would have to get we have a solicitor who is like really into it and she has numbers and I can get her to get that stuff to you. I don't have them off the top of my head. So.
Okay, because I'm very supportive of periodically going through properties and making sure that people are not getting exemptions when they shouldn't be, or properties, not people. Properties are not. But it would be good to see, right? Like, if most of them if right at step one, the county's saying, oh, no, this is definitely a nonprofit, or,
Yeah, I would say just because they make that determination doesn't mean, like, my counter is like, there are more opportunities to push back on their initial review and then have more opportunity to explain why we believe they should not be tax exempt. So like, like the first, I guess in my eyes, like that first round is kind of like, we're just doing it. And then if we believe that we still have a good shot of kind of challenging that, we're just doing that as a procedural, like to get it through them to then go challenge it further up the chain.
And at what stage in that process does the property owner kind of step in and, presumably appeal or contest or whatever?
At any point. They could appeal at the initial stage because obviously they'll get notice. And then if the county makes a determination that it is tax exempt and we appeal it, they can then still continue on throughout the whole process.
Okay. And so far we have not gotten kind of through that process with one of our larger
Not through
nonprofits.
as far as I recall, not through the full process. I believe we're still at the board of viewers.
Okay.
And then the next step after that could be the court of Commonwealth.
Okay. Okay. I've said this before. I think this is something we should be doing periodically, right? Like just to verify that, if something is tax exempt today, that it still is tomorrow or 2 years from now. Oops. I also am of the mind, I know we talk about payment in lieu of taxes, but I feel that when we say that payment in lieu of taxes, that means payment in lieu of taxes because you're a nonprofit and you're not paying taxes because you're a nonprofit, not payment in lieu of taxes that you legally owe. Like, if you owe taxes, you owe taxes.
Right.
But that the pilots or the desire for a pilot is separate from, right, taxes that an organization owes because they owe those taxes, right?
Yeah, so
It's payment in lieu of taxes that you don't owe because you're a nonprofit.
correct.
That's the way I
Yeah,
see
so
it,
yeah,
you
you're
know?
paying as a gesture of goodwill, I guess.
Right.
Instead of because you're not paying taxes that
Right.
you would
Like if I
otherwise
have a
owe.
nonprofit organization and I have a home, I pay taxes on my home
Right.
because that's my home and it is not, and I owe taxes on that. But if I have my nonprofit over here that is, you know, a giant whatever and using resources, it would be nice if I contributed on that side too.
Correct.
Anyway, just sort of making a point there. And then, yeah, so I guess with what Councilman Charlin said, I mean, I know budgets and whatnot, and this is something that we've talked about as members. So we've had, in the past, we've had a solicitor on the council floor. I think there was some debate. Well, let me just step back. I will say that as a council member, as a legislator, right, it is difficult to write legislation. You know, we use interns and it's great, you know, but you know, you want to write legislation that is legally sound. And but my understanding is that there have been sort of maybe some disagreement, but like, you know, if we have a solicitor on the council side, is that solicitor just the solicitor for council as a body, or are they there to help us as council members write legislation? There seems to be some debate about that. Would that be a role that could exist? I mean, I would love for us to have a solicitor in your office whose entire job, or at least a large portion of their job, would be to help us write legislation. Like, we come to you, you know, we come to you. What it's felt like to date has been sort of, or at least I only speak for my office, is that we write some legislation and then we send it over to you to see if it's like, if it checks out, which is fine too, you know. But I always feel more comfortable having like you know what I mean, that the experts from, the experts help, you know, whether it be like the zoning team help craft zoning legislation that I then want to introduce. I would also feel with any legislation.
Yeah, so my response would be that, you know, it's a capacity issue for us. Like, you know, as much as I love having you guys as our client, like I have, you know, we also have other departments in asking similar requests. So it gets to a point of like trying to, you know, address how that can be stretched across our municipal attorneys who primarily handle the legislation. I would say that, you know, should council choose to have their own solicitor, it would make sense, and, you know, we're always happy to work with that solicitor, which I feel like we've done in the past, is like trying to address, you know, some of the legal issues that we may kind of see with legislation versus kind of like their perspective of how they can promote council's will through the legislation. Like, happy to work through that, and I think that would make sense because you would have someone particularly devoted in that sense to do that. As far as us having a dedicated person, again, it's like, it's really I'd say a capacity issue, mainly because like, from what I've seen, I don't, you know, just me being honest as putting on my manager hat, like I wouldn't think there's enough work for one person to do just the legislation you guys get, because not that it comes few and far between, but I don't think it comes like so often that we could have a dedicated person. But then on the flip side, if we had, like, as what we currently have is like, I have to kind of feel out whose workload can address your issues within the timelines that you guys need the task done. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, maybe it's just something for us to consider. I mean, just, you know, where that person sits and yeah, I mean, how that works. Because I feel like in the past, we've also had issues where it's like, oh, well, the council solicitor doesn't agree with the law department, and that doesn't, I would love to have sort of a more harmonious process where it's like, look, this is, you know, we have an expert in municipal law, and that is the person who helps us write legislation, or, you know, that advises us. But again, like, it would be nice to have somebody, so if I'm having a call with Keystone Research on the fair share tax, it would be great to just have somebody from legal who I can pull in on that scheduling, to just have that ear so that I'm not going really far down the, down the path to then have, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah.
And like I said, I try to make my attorneys as available as possible.
No,
so
I was just wondering if that would be something you would be open to, if there were a way to budget for
happy to
it
talk
somehow.
about
Okay.
whatever could work for everybody. So
Okay. I don't think I have, any other questions. Thanks.
Thank you. No one online. All of my questions have been answered as well. I had a couple that were similar to those asked, so no further questions. So unless there's anything else from any final words. Okay.
I'm good.
Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your work, and you are free to go.
Thank you.
Final line for all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And we'll have Ethics Hearing Board as our final entity of the day. Welcome. Director McDevitt.
Okay, Ethics Hearing Board. The mission of the Ethics Hearing Board is to preserve the trust placed in the public servants of the city, to promote public confidence in government, to protect the integrity of government decision-making, and to enhance government efficiency. The Ethics Hearing Board comprises 9 members with reputations of personal integrity and honesty. Designed to be an impartial arm of government, 7 of its 9 members are selected by community organizations. The board's staff includes an executive director. Those served by the board include current, former, and prospective officials and employees, including those acting under contract, consultants, campaign contributors, and persons and entities who do or seek to do business with the city. Third parties involved with covered conduct, and those who give gifts to covered parties or relatives. That was a mouthful. There's one full-time position in the Ethics Hearing Board, and there is a small allowance for part-time work and interns. There was actually an increase in that line item this year. And in non-personnel changes, there is overall a $20,000 decrease in non-personnel costs for the Ethics Hearing Board, $19,000 mostly for legal fees, and a $1,000 decrease in transportation.
Thank you very much. Please introduce yourself. And it was my understanding you had a presentation, or at least a...
I do.
Okay,
So
fantastic.
my name's
great. Okay.
My name's Leanne Davis. I'm the ethics officer and the director of the Ethics Hearing Board. I have a short presentation if you would like. I know it's late in the day. Overall, our budget request, as Director McDevitt has explained, is budget neutral. It's a reallocation from our professional services to be able to provide more intern or part-time positions that we would then terminate if we needed to engage in the anticipated professional services that could come up. Sure. The Ethics Hearing Board is 35 years old. It was first created in 1990. We had a major overhaul in 2015, which resulted in staffing starting around 2016. The main purpose of any governmental ethics board is to help those who are seeking help. We're here to provide guidance and to prevent unethical conduct or violations. We exist based on several different laws here, the Home Rule Charter, Code. We also can provide regulations that would interpret that. And I say we as the board. I work at their service. So there's also ethics laws in the state law. Ours go a little bit further. They're actually in the process of updating the regulations, which I've been participating in, which has been exciting. In order to effectuate our goals of open and fair government, these are the main key functions of our board. Another way to look at it is the different types of subject matters that are referred to our office. So these are all the types of laws that are incorporated into our jurisdiction. You've already discussed the many people that are served by the board. So anyone who's subject to the board's jurisdiction can receive free ethics advice. The model codes of ethics have three major aspects: a comprehensive and comprehensible code of conduct. And I'm quoting here Mark Davies, who I think is pretty great. And I apologize, the link didn't show up here since it's hyperlink, I guess. Sorry about that. There's also the ability to provide independent advice and enforcement, and then to make sure that there's sort of this check through disclosures. Our code of conduct is a major part of my job description. It talks about updating the legislation and providing trainings. Our advice and education or enforcement is independent. As you can see, here are the seats for each of our board, 7 of which are from outside entities. We give advice in many different ways. I am always available for quick, informal consultations. We also have these formal board opinions, which are kind of like legal opinions that would analyze the different applicable laws within our jurisdiction and how they would apply to the specific facts. They provide protection for anyone who is requesting them, and that would fit under that specific fact pattern as long as they follow the advice. Yes. And then once the board kind of draws the line in the sand as to its position, then I can provide, as ethics officer, formal advisories that would provide the same level of protection, just on a quicker basis. We don't have to wait for the monthly meeting of the board. The board also is codified to address employment issues of family members. We also provide essentially like approval letters for the ability to engage in city services that would have a financial interest. So normally there's a prohibition on contracting with the city, but there's times where that would be appropriate, and we do that pretty often right now with the URA. And then there's also the ability to request a propriety or evaluation of a valuable gift. This is our flow chart for how we process enforcement cases. Our board is bifurcated so that they can protect due process. We manage many different disclosures. Some of them are annual and some are transactional based. And then here's a little description of our part-time or intern request, modified from last year. All right, well, thank you. That's my little discussion. Would you like to ask any questions?
Thank you. Yes, and I'll turn it over to Councilmember Warwick first.
Yes.
I don't actually have any questions. Thank you
Okay.
for, you're always so helpful when I do have questions about this or that, I always appreciate you're so quick to respond and, always give me good advice, good guidance. So, I'm glad to have you in the role and, have you available. It's definitely important and helpful, as an elected person to have you as a resource.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. Likewise, I don't think I have any specific budget-related questions. I guess the only thing I'll muse on a little bit is a few years ago, we as council and staff had a mandatory ethics training, and it might be time for another one in the new year, especially with a new member coming on. There's always new staff coming in and out. I'm always surprised at how much I'm surprised at. Like, I have to be reminded, like, how how complicated some of the individual cases can be, and how much we really just need to always keep it front of mind, because you know how easy something might be that you think is absolutely not a problem to to then actually be out of our ethics code. So as a public servant, so yeah, maybe having another one of those, we can arrange for that in the new year. I always appreciate though the formal and informal advice you're able to give in all regards. So thanks to you, and thanks for what you do. Thanks for what the board does. And is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for this. Thanks for taking the time to remind everyone of your and the board's role here and the purpose. And, I think it's always a great reminder. These hearings are a great reminder of what each of the departments and boards does. So thanks again.
Great.
Well, with that, I will motion to recess these budget hearings, and we are recessed.